I've worked with hundreds of agencies all over the world, setting up different automations, and after spending countless of hours on their backend systems with agencies doing over $100,000 a month, these are the 5 most common automations that I've seen every single agency have in their systems. In this video, I'll be breaking down each automation, showing you why they actually have it, and then I'll also show you some examples, showing you how you can just implement it straight into your agency by copy and pasting some of our existing automation templates. As always, we're not holding anything back, so we might as well get straight into it. The first thing I want to talk about is onboarding. Now, within onboarding, this is something I talk about so much in my channel, so I thought I might as well start with it. And, when you talk about onboarding, there's two different sides to onboarding. There's client onboarding and then there's employee onboarding. In this video, I'm going to be specifically talking about client onboarding. But guys, in all honesty, client onboarding and employee onboarding is basically the same thing. You're just changing who you're actually bringing on. A lot of agencies, at least the ones that we work with at the higher level, do focus both on client onboarding and employee onboarding, especially because once you're at that point where you're consistently bringing people in, right? You have a recruitment funnel, the same way you have, I don't know, a lead funnel, right? You need to have a way to actually bring these people onto your experience because, the same way you have to onboard a client because first impressions matters, the exact same way you have to onboard an employee properly because first impressions also matter for them. And you don't want employees to churn as well. So in this video, we're focusing on clients, but in all honesty, guys, everything I say today, you can apply to both employees and client. And just a fun fact to actually show you the importance of onboarding. Wiseout did a survey a few years back that showed that people are 80% more likely to stay loyal if there's a good onboarding process. And more interestingly, people felt like 90% of companies could improve the onboarding process. So even though I've made so many videos and there's so many videos online talking about onboarding, it's still not something that's at the level it should be, right? So I'm going to keep on knowing you about onboarding and let me show you the automation, or at least some of the automations you can implement in your agency to improve your onboarding process. The way we can kind of split onboarding is within 3 different phases. Now, there are more, right? But just to keep it very, very simple, there's 3 different phases. What happens immediately after a client pays, what happens within 24 hours of that client paying, and what happens in the first 7 days. So what we're talking about today is what should happen as soon as a client pays. So for example, the contract creation, onboarding emails, portal creation, different things like that. With the 24 hours and 7 days, this is something you still should automate to some degree. However, it's not the priority. You get a lot more return from focusing on what happens immediately. I mean, if you look at the graph, it kind of goes like this in terms of kind of the benefits that you actually get from onboarding, because here it gets a bit more complicated, whereas most of the stuff here is fairly simple. But one thing I will say, don't just neglect these 24 hours and the first 7 days of a client journey. At least make sure you have a clearly mapped out process going over exactly what you're meant to be doing. And if you want an example of what I would consider the perfect onboarding process, you can check out this video right here. But let's talk about exactly what should happen immediately after. Like I said, these are different things like content creation, invoice creation, welcome emails, portal creation, and even task creation for different employees. The most common thing I'm seeing that a lot of people aren't doing, especially at a lower level, is the task creation, right? For a lot of agencies we work with, when we set up an onboarding process, the way we see it, there's 2 things that happen, right? There's what happens on the front end, so whatever the client receives, and then there's what happens on the back end, so whatever the team receives. And a lot of people, right, especially at the beginner level, they ignore what happens on the back end, so what the team should actually get. So when you're actually going through your onboarding process, right, there are going to be specific things that your team needs to do, whether it's call the client within 5 minutes to welcome them on, whether it's start working on their onboarding call, different things like that. So what we do, we basically create different tasks within the automation so we can assign it to the specific employee, so we can actually make sure the onboarding process is as smooth as possible, both on the front end on the back end. So I'll give you 2 different examples of these automations. These are from past YouTube videos, but we might as well get straight into it, and I'll kind of walk you through an example. Obviously, guys, I'll try to include all the links to these automations and so on and so forth in the first link in the description. You can get free access to all of these. This is the first one. This is an example of an onboarding automation, which is exactly what happens as soon as a client gets onboarding. The first step of this is the trigger. Now, the trigger is the most important part of any automation because it's what causes the automation to actually begin running. For onboarding, the main triggers are, let's say, as soon as a client pays, you can trigger by the payment, you can trigger by updating your CRM, or you can even trigger it by, I don't know, one of your sales guys pressing a button on the screen, right? So many different options you can actually have here, but the trigger is very important because if you don't get the trigger right, then the rest of the automation won't work. Once the triggers run, this goes ahead and actually creates a Slack channel with the actual employee's name. And if you want information about that, or again, put in the company name here and making it lowercase because Slack is a bit annoying with that. Then we're going to go ahead and actually invite all the relevant users to that Slack channel. As soon as that's done, we're basically sending a welcome welcome message, letting them know that, this is where all the communication is going to happen. And we're also going to pin a message to the folder. Once you've kind of finished the Slack side of things, we then go ahead and start creating different Google Drive folders. So in this example, we're creating 2 different folders. So one within the other folder, and this is all based on a company's name. So for example, you can see here, it's got company name folder. And the second one we create within the previous folder. And this is the shared folder. This is the folder we can share with the actual client. Then we go ahead and update our CRM. In this example, I'm using the local. Obviously, you can use whatever CRM you actually want. And what we're doing here basically is we're updating the lead if it exists. If it doesn't, you can go ahead and create the lead, and then we'll create different tasks for the different employees within the actual client portal. Then we go ahead and send an onboarding email, and then we send another email within 5 minutes, just letting them know, an update or different tasks or different things like that. So this example of onboarding automation. Now, this is nothing simple, guys. At least you have a whole, 30-minute video breaking this automation down and me building it live. But it's an example of what you need to automate as soon as a client comes in, because this will be one of the best things you can actually do. First impressions really do matter. I don't want to go on another rant about the importance of onboarding. However, it's something that really does matter, because first impressions matter, especially in the agency world where you're dealing with people. So if you spend some time and money, investing into your onboarding process, it'll be one of the best returns you can actually get. Because fun fact, onboarding is one of the easiest ways you can reduce churn, right? Right. First impressions do matter, guys. I promise you that. Another automation I could go through is the Slack automation, but this is kind of similar to what we saw earlier, right? This is more so a smaller part of the onboarding process, but what we're doing here is we're creating a channel, setting a topic of a channel, inviting the users, creating a message, and then creating another message to actually get them to invite. Once again, you can find the links to these videos in the description if you want a full breakdown, but that's an example of onboarding automation. I kid you not, guys, every single agency that we work with, we set up an onboarding process for. This is how impactful something like this can be. So please, if there's one automation you build today, it's your onboarding process, because it's going to make things so much smoother, give your clients a better experience, and will also reduce your churn. So yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is end of day forms. Now, this is where we're starting to get into things that are a bit less common, but it's one of the most powerful things that agencies are actually doing, especially as you start growing your team and you want the different team leaders to have an overview of everything that's happening. So the way this kind of automation works is quite simple. You basically have different forms for different people, right? So for example, a different form for your appointment setters, a form for your closers, a form for your customer success managers, and you're basically prompting them at the end of the day to complete this form. And once they complete this form, you do one of 2 things. Firstly, you track it. So you have something like this tracking sheet right here, where you can, automatically amend it, see who's doing what, and at the end have a summary of the day or different things like that. This is important because you can actually track performance. You can let everyone see their KPIs, different things like that, right? But the second thing this kind of creates is accountability. Every single day, they have to go through and actually create this form, which creates such a good level of accountability, which is basically just being responsible for your actions and answering for the results. This is kind of stems from the Hawthorne effect, which is basically an effect where individuals modify their behavior in response to being observed or held accountable. And, if you think about it, this makes sense. It's kind of like losing weight, right? If you're trying to lose weight and you measure yourself every single day, you're going to be much more motivated and you're going to keep on trying to lose weight and perform better at the gym. So you can use this to actually get better results from your employees just by getting them to fill this end of day form. And even better, right? What we've actually implemented in a couple of agencies, if you create some sort of leaderboard system, right? It doesn't have to be crazy, right? But so in the spreadsheet, you can rank the top appointment setters or the top closers, different things like that. That's going to create even more motivation for them to beat the top person. And if you could create some really good incentives, especially cash incentives, everyone loves cash, then you can get much better performance from your employees, guys. The actual automation for this looks very simple. All it is once a day, at the end of the day, you're sending a message to your team so they can actually be reminded to complete the onboarding form. This is a very important step, guys. Previously we've done it without this step, so it's just basically hoping they would complete a form, and a lot of people don't, they forget. So every single day you send a message to the actual Slack channel or wherever you communicate with your team, telling them to complete the onboarding form. Once the form is complete, you go ahead and update the tracking sheet. And at the end of the day, you can go ahead and create a summary sheet with a team leader. This is an example of what the automation looks like. So once again, this is when we're creating a Slack message for the different channels, letting them know that they need to complete the onboarding form. This is an example of the onboarding form for customer success. How many hours did you work today? How many client meetings did you have? How many tasks did you complete? How many issues did you resolve today? Any feedback, so on and so forth. Then as soon as that Google form comes in, you just go ahead and add it to the Google Sheet, just like this. So you add it as an individual row with the name of the employee, number of hours they worked, the feedback, so on and so forth. And then you run this simple automation where every single day it basically scrapes this sheet from the data for today, creates a message to the different team leaders, and then summarizes data based on past data as well, and then sends a message to an executive to let them know what's going on. So for example, this could be something like, today we closed 6 people, we booked 20 appointments, and the customer success team had 20 meetings, right? Obviously, just an example, well, this is such a powerful system, especially as your team starts growing, because it allows you to have an overview of everything that's happening without having to message people individually. How many appointments did you close today? Just a massive waste of time. And if you do want a video going over how to build this automation, you can check out this video right here. Once again, this is one of those high leverage systems. And in this case, we're applying to appointment setters, closers, and customer success managers, right? But you can apply this to anyone, right? Even your clients if you wanted to. So let's say you run a lead gen agency or even a content agency and you want your clients to report certain things like metrics, I don't know, something like that, right? You can just send this to your clients as well. It's very, very powerful, guys. And even if you don't have a team, you can implement this for yourself, right? To kind of hold yourself accountable. So at the end of the day, you send a message to yourself, you complete different forms depending on the different roles you take on that day. So for example, if you have a sales call, you could just complete the closers form, so on and so forth. And it's a great way to just make sure you're tracking your KPIs and holding yourself and your team accountable. The third thing I want to talk about is feedback. Now, feedback is one of the most important ways you can actually improve both your results and your experience because you talk directly with your ideal customer, which is your client. Qualtrics actually did a study that showed that companies that had a voice of the customer kind of program, which basically just means a feedback collection program, had a 15 to 20% higher upsell or cross-sell across the board, right? Now, this isn't a direct indication of customer experience, right? However, you can kind of put one and one together. If people were cross-sold and upsold into something else, they have a really good service and they wanted to kind of continue with the company and working along them. So this is a great metric that we can kind of base off. And feedback is so important, guys. So when it comes to actually collecting feedback, it's split into two main parts. We have collecting actual feedback and then implementing the feedback. This is not something that can be done by itself, right? You can't just collect the feedback and then hope everything goes well. You need to also have the systems to implement the feedback. And this is actually one of the things that we always need to kind of add in to clients' existing process. So some people that we work with already did have the process to collect feedback. However, they weren't doing anything with it. They were just collecting it and just leaving it there in a Google form or in a spreadsheet without having any sort of incentive for their team to look at it and actually take the feedback and actually improve, which makes no sense, right? Imagine you open up to a friend or you get a friend to open up to you, sorry, and you want to tell them, I want to be a better friend. Let me know how I can improve, right? Or even a girlfriend, whatever, boyfriend, if you get them to open up to you, right, and they tell you, okay, I want you to do this, I don't like this, what, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of that process, a day later or 7 days later, you don't change at all, then how do you think that's going to make the other person feel? They're going to feel like they're neglected and they probably were even more pissed off than they were in the original place. So when you go around the process of using feedback within your agency, it's not just about the collection. It's not just about asking your client what the problem is. It's also about taking that feedback and actually give them and having a way to process it and pass it on to the relevant people that are working with that client so you can give that client a better experience. And I'm going to show you how. And after I kind of break down how to do this, I'll show you an automation example that you can actually copy. In terms of collecting, it's very simple. For every single client, let's say every month, every week, right, every day if you wanted to, depends on the cadence, you basically send out a form or even better, you hop on a call with your client and you run them through different questions to basically collect that feedback. If you're unsure about questions, it's hard for me to kind of share specific examples, but I'll show you an example at the end of this form. But honestly, you're much better off just going to ChatGPT or kind of brainstorming your own questions because they'll be more valuable to your customers. So the questions that I ask my clients will be a lot different to the questions you ask your clients, right? Once again, fairly simple flow. Just make sure you set that cadence on how often you actually want to do this. And in terms of implementing, which is actually the key, once again, very, very important. If you go down the process of collecting feedback, we don't have that feedback. So we basically want to create an action plan on how we can actually improve that client experience and actually implement it within that client account, for example, as soon as possible. So let's talk about how to actually do this using automation. Now, this is going to be split into two different things. We have the first automation where let's say 30 days after onboarding, and then it kind of starts a loop. You either initiate a nurture sequence to get them to complete a form, you send a form to the client directly, or even better, you send a reminder to the customer success manager on the next call to basically at the end of it take about 20 minutes to talk about feedback and collect the resident feedback. Once again, this is going to look a lot different to different people. In my opinion, the best way to do this is having it on a call, so sending a reminder to your CSM. However, if you want the client to just complete in their own time, you can, but from what I've seen, it's a lot better when you have that human touch, right? And you actually have someone that can hear them out properly, because I think they'll be a lot more open to writing something down rather than just on a random form. And especially is when someone opens up about one thing, it's kind of freaking the door, right? You're getting your foot through the door, and then you have to go ahead and actually just slam that door open and get all the frustrations out, guys. Because if you actually understand the problem, you can fix it before it actually becomes a proper problem. So for example, let's say someone's not happy about the level of communication again, And in one of the feedback calls, they say, oh yeah, sometimes I wish the messages were a bit longer, but that wasn't the real issue. The real issue is that they won't get enough communication. If your customer success manager just kind of drives in that point a bit more, be like, oh yeah, tell me a bit more about that. Is there anything else I can help you with? Different things like that. Then it's going to allow you to open the door a lot more. And then you'll get to the real problem, which is not having enough communication. And once again, then you can go ahead and take that action, which I'll talk about now in a second. So let's say you actually complete that form, whether it's your client or your CSM. You want an automation to store that form somewhere. This is important. But then what we like to do, we basically create all the form answers, send it over to an agent within ChatGPT, and that creates actionable points that we send to the relevant CSM manager so that they can actually take away and improve that client experience straight away. I do have a whole video going over how to do this, but if you talk about this for a second, we have this long form right here. And once again, this is just an example. You can actually view this now if you want to. Just to get an example, I wouldn't copy this. This is the old one, but how satisfied with your experience? How would you improve this for your team? How would you read communication? How would you improve this for your team? So on and so forth. You don't have to go form. You can use something a bit prettier like Typeform, for example. And all we're doing here is as soon as that automation triggers, we're sending it over to ChatGPT with a very, very simple prompt, right? Sending it over to an agent is always better. And what I mean by that is when you're actually creating an automation, whether you're using Make.com or Zapier and you're actually involving AI, if you're using OpenAI, you have two options. You can create a conversation or you can create a conversation with an assistant. An assistant is basically the exact same thing as a GPT, whereas it's something that is a bit more customizable to you. So rather than having the AI look for every single piece of data on the internet to give you an answer, you're more so refining it to your specific documentation. So for example, you could upload a SOP, you could upload a video going over your company, different things like that, and you get much more accurate responses. So when you're actually using AI automations, a little tip is always use agents or assistants. Anyways, you get them to create a little message. This is an example of feedback. So you have a summary, and then you have the action plan for improvement, which once again is very, very easy for a CSM to see this and be like, okay, cool, let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. And an important thing I'll say, just to add on to this, guys, have your team managers hold those specific CSMs accountable when they actually receive that feedback. Because once again, one of the worst things you can do is get someone to open up to you and then completely disregard their comments, right? It's kind of like stabbing in the heart. And at that point, you might as well have not collected the feedback in the first place. And then what we're doing in this automation, we're sending a message to that specific CSM, and then we're also creating a record for the CSM to actually implement that feedback. So once again, very, very simple automation, but it's one of the automations that every single agency we work with have started implementing because it's such a brilliant way to increase both your customer experience and also the results you're actually getting, because you're literally talking to your ideal customers. And from those conversations, you can gain so many insights that you can pass on to your sales team so they can actually increase their close rate, pass it on to yourself so you can actually increase your product. There's so many different benefits of doing this, guys. I really recommend you set up some sort of feedback collection and most importantly, implementation system. I'm going to keep driving this point in. Don't just collect the feedback. Make sure you have some systems to actually implement it. Because if you just collect it, there's no real point in doing this, right? You just have a bunch of data for no reason, and people are going to feel like you just violated their type, which you obviously don't want. But cool, guys. We've gone over onboarding. We've gone over end of day forms. We've gone over feedback. Now let's talk about reporting. Now, most agencies, at least the ones that we work with, have some sort of client reports, right? So using something like agency analytics, where once a month, once a quarter, or even once a week, they send some sort of reports to their actual agencies. And if you're not sending any sort of reports to your clients, then make sure, depending on your service delivery, you find the relevant software so you can actually easily do that. So for example, if you're doing lead gen, make sure you send them amount of appointments you got every week on a weekly basis. If you're doing content, make sure you let them know the analytics that they actually got this week. Different things like that. Keep them in the loop, guys. Go back to client communication. And this example of automation, right, is very, very simple. I mean, once a week, you create a report. Maybe you can take a screenshot if it doesn't have the direct integration. And then you send an email to the client with a screenshot and then send an email to the CSM, letting them know that, the client just received the report, get in touch with them and just in case they have any questions. This is fairly basic, but there's more. Right. When I was looking at this, I wanted to actually improve it. And the way I did it was using AI. So we basically have AI analyze the data and then create a basically summary of the different graphs. And this does one of two things is very, very powerful. First, it sends a personalized summary to the client. So rather than them just receiving a generic email with a random screenshot and just, hey, look at your data for this week, which doesn't really mean much to them, you can add something where the first line is a personalized comment, which is just a cherry on top, right? Just increase the number of touch points they actually have. But the second thing it actually does, which I think is once again a bit more valuable, is you can have the AI analyze that data and send actionable steps to your CSM, just decreasing the amount of workload that they actually need to do. And once again, guys, this just comes back to being proactive rather than reactive. If you have this AI analyzing the data every single week, they'll be able to spot different things that are missing and, being able to pair this AI with an experienced customer success team, it's just an ultimate combination for your customer experience, which will do wonders. So an example of what this automation can actually look like is every week you go ahead and create a report, take a screenshot, analyze the data. This is where you use the AI. And once again, guys, if you are using AI within your automations, I would also recommend to go down the agent side of things rather than just a generic prompt. And what you can actually do, which is a bit more complicated, but you could if you wanted to, is create an individual system for each one of your employees. So for example, let's say you onboard company A, you create an agent for company A based, and every single week you update that agent based on the data they're actually receiving, or different messages they actually have in different meetings. You can upload so much on the database, and then every single time you talk to that specific agent, they know exactly who company A is, everything they need to know about company A, the performance, their goals, how they're actually doing, the way they different like to work. It's just, it creates such more powerful AI for you guys. But I will say that is a bit more kind of advanced. So if you want me to actually make a video going over how to actually do that for every single person, and most importantly, how to automate that, because you don't want to be doing that manually every single time, leave a comment below and I'll try my best to get it recorded for you guys. But basically, we'll go ahead and actually analyze the data. And here we're doing one of two things. Firstly, we're creating a short summary that we're going to send an email to the client, right? With the first line being personalized. Nothing, doesn't have to be anything crazy, just a little bit of personalized touch. And then we're creating a summary with actual steps that send to the relevant customer success manager. So once again, they can have an action plan on how to improve that client experience, and then they can go ahead and pass it on to your fulfillment team and so on and so forth. Very, very simple automation, but this is automation that is very powerful, guys, both on the back end once again and also on the front end for your client. All right, guys, so we've gone over the 4 automations, but most importantly, guys, if you found this video valuable, make sure to like and subscribe. We post videos like this every single week, going over different ways you can improve your agency's back end so you can take on more clients while still improving everyone's customer experience to decrease your churn rate. So if you think of your agency like a bucket, if you keep watching these videos and implement the different feedback that I actually give you, you're going to make the bucket bigger, and you're also going to be patching up all the holes at the bottom so the bucket's not leaking out. So if you found this video valuable, make sure to leave a comment below to let me know, and also like and subscribe because you'll see more videos like this on your feed. So win-win for everyone. The last thing I want to talk about today, guys, is billing. Now, this is probably one of the most high leverage things you can actually do in this video, especially if you have a larger team. But in terms of when it comes to billing, there's so many different automations you can actually do. So what I thought I'd do, rather than just showing you one automation, I want to show you 3 of the most popular billing automations that we set up for our clients and that we've seen different agencies actually implement within their systems. So the first one is very, very simple, guys, and it kind of resembles what they used to have back in the day in the sales offices, where every single time you made a sale, you'd have a massive bell and people used to ring it and everyone used to cheer, right? We're doing the exact same thing, but obviously because now working at home is a thing, no one's in the office anymore, so we want to kind of replicate the same process. And this automation is so simple, but it's one of the most satisfying automations. Every single time a payment is received, whether it's on Stripe or whatever payment process you actually have, we send a message on Slack in a winners channel, and it's just letting them know, okay, cool, this company's been closed for X. Let's make sure to give them the best possible experience in the shortest amount of time. Once again, guys, this is one of those kind of simple automations that's not really necessary, but I kid you not, so many different agencies I work with have this automation or want to set up this automation. And honestly, I've got the exact same thing in my agency, and it's amazing. It's one of the best notifications you can actually get on Slack. And it also kind of helps motivate the team. If you send this to your closers, they'll be more motivated to close, especially if they get commission, or even a customer success managers, different things like that. Just a great automation to actually have to get the morale up. I mean, there's a reason people used it back in the day. So why do we just implement the exact same thing just online this time? The second automation is a bit more important than the first one, and it's to do with payment failures. So this is something that actually is very, very often within agencies. And, it can be due to a bunch of different reasons: insufficient amounts, expired cards, downtime, fraud prevention. I literally had this happen to me a couple of days ago with one of my first ever clients. She got a credit card compromised, so the payment actually failed. And guess what? Rather than waiting around and having to check the Stripe account, I got a notification as soon as it happens so we can resolve it. And the main aim of this automation is to give you a clear overview of all the kind of payment fails. So as soon as something happens, you can act on it straight away rather than, waiting 3 months and realize you haven't been paid and then having that awkward conversation to actually collect your money. And this automation is fairly simple. Every single time a payment fails in something like Stripe, or once again, whatever payment processor you want to use, you want to go ahead and find that specific client by the email, update the project to the payment failed status, message your CSM to let them know that the cast or payment failed and to get in contact with the client as soon as possible, and also send an email to the client, letting them know that the payment has failed, because most people don't even know, honestly, and any additional steps they can actually fix it. I'm telling you guys, you might not realize this, but especially as you start getting more clients in, it's going to become harder and harder to actually manage your finances. So if you have 5 clients now, then yes, it's easy. But if you have 20 clients, 30 clients, 50 clients, even 100 clients, and making sure everyone's paid their finances every single month is going to be a pain in the ass, especially if you don't have the kind of resources, at least just yet, to hire a full-time finance department and making sure payments collected. And this automation kind of replaces that, at least for now, so you don't have to bring on another hire unnecessarily. The last automation I'm going to show you in terms of billing is one of the most complicated ones, but it's probably the ones that will save you the most time and avoid the most number of mistakes when it comes to paying your customers out, especially if you have a big team. And all we're basically doing here is automating the payroll for the different freelancers. And what I mean by freelancers is people that are not full-time. So this is either people you pay on hourly rate or people you pay per project, or different things like that. At the start, everyone uses freelancers. I even use freelancers to kind of help me with my service delivery sometimes, because it makes life a lot easier and you don't have the necessity of having an employee full-time and paying them that annual salary. And all we're basically doing here is every week, every 2 weeks, every month, obviously depending on how often you actually pay your guys, you have this automation look through a spreadsheet or list of every single employee, find the ones which are on an hourly rate, and then you can access to your time tracking software or whatever you use, like a spreadsheet, and sum up the times for that specific week, month, or bi-weekly, depends obviously how often you actually do it. And then, using information from a spreadsheet and the sum up time, you go ahead and times to calculate the salary or how much money you actually owe them. And then, use some sort of payment software to pre-approve it and then send an email to the admin. So literally all they have to do is press a button to actually approve it. In terms of payment software, there's so many different options out there. Depends on country you're trying to send money to or send money from. All I do is just have a quick search on Google. You'll find someone with an API key that you can just integrate within the automation. And very importantly, guys, you'll notice here, I'm not just automatically sending the money. I am adding that human touch. And this is something I really would recommend, especially when you deal with payments. Because, for example, let's say someone inputs the wrong time, or you input the wrong number, or even the automation messes up. Because especially if you're sending automation up, guys, no offense, you guys are an automation specialist, right? You're agency owner, so you're likely to set this up the wrong way. So at least at the beginning, I would always recommend to have that approval process at the end. So you're not just paying people unnecessary amounts and then having to follow up, so on and so forth. It can just become a massive inconvenience. So I would always have that kind of human intervention process to make sure everyone's getting the right amount. And it might even work the other way. You might not even be overpaying them. You might underpay them, which, for their morale is even worse. You don't want to do that. And this is a simple automation, guys. I'm actually making a video going over how to actually break this down. So if you're watching this in the future, have a look at my channel. I've probably released it. And if you're watching this right now, firstly, thank you for kind of being early to this video. But secondly, within the next couple of weeks, I will have a new video going over exactly how you can just copy and paste a system that can do this straight into your agency. But more on that in a second. But yeah, guys, those are basically the 5 most common automations that agencies actually implement. Within each of these automations, I've shown you different examples. And for some of those examples, I actually have whole videos on how to actually implement them. So if that was interesting, I've left all the links in the description. If you like and subscribe, you'll see more videos like this on your feed. So it's a win-win for everyone. And I get to kind of share the channel with different agency owners who are looking to set up skill-proof systems. If anything I said today was interesting, I'd also recommend you join our Scale-Proof community. This is a community of agency owners all looking to set up scale-proof systems. Within there, we do weekly calls. You have access to every single one of the resources in this video and from my YouTube, as well as a scale-proof roadmap, which is literally a step-by-step guide on how we help agencies set up scale-proof systems. So you can just copy and implement our systems within your agency. And if you have any questions about anything I talked about today, within there, you also get direct access to me and the rest of my team. So some of these automations are a bit more complex. So if you're trying to build them out and you get stuck at some point, just join the community, drop a post, and someone will be there to help you. And the last thing I'll say, guys, is don't stop your learning here. For a lot of this video, I talked about specific automation examples. So if you already know the automation you want to do, then go ahead, follow that specific video. However, if you're still trying to figure out which automations you want to create based on your specific preferences and your daily routine, that I recommend checking out this video, where I basically go over the framework you can use to automate daily tasks that actually happen in your agency. Hope this video has been valuable, guys. When I try and make these kind of automation videos, I don't try to include cool automations or automations that, look really, really fancy and are complicated, show off my skills. I just want to show automations that are actually actionable and actually provide leverage to your agency, because that's the most important part. You can set up as many cool automations as you want, but if you're not actually using them on a day-to-day basis, on a monthly basis within your agency, then you're just wasting your time, right? So every single one of these automations we've set up and are being used every single day in our different partners that we actually work with. So these are not just cool automations or automations that look fancy. These are automations that actually work within agencies that are literally doing over $100,000 a month. So please take the time to implement at least one of these automations, because the leverage you can actually get from some of these is very lucrative, guys. But apart from that, that's it from me today. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you want to see any of these in more detail, make sure to leave a comment here or within the community. And apart from that, guys, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.